Hey everyone, I'm Dan. This is the NDIS Circle. We're going to talk about today how much NDIS funding can I receive. It's a little bit of a clickbaity article, I admit, but I wanted to talk about it because there are some sort of misconceptions out there, and I think as an NDIS participant, you can look to your left, look to your right, and see people that are sort of roughly in a similar life situation as you with similar disability needs, and the funding decisions can be completely different, and I think that can be frustrating, understandably, and confusing as well. So going to run through some of the things that the NDIA might be considering in terms of your circumstances, needs and goals, and how can that affect an NDIS participant and family in terms of how much funding they receive in the NDIS plan. So the amount of NDIS funding that each person living with a disability receives is different based on their individual needs and circumstances and goals, short term and long term. And I'm sort of going to run through some of these considerations below, and so you can gauge how much NDIS funding you might be able to receive and in what area, and how they might help you to progress towards your life goals. So in terms of disability needs, that's sort of like the first thing that they look at, and then there's circumstances and then goals. So those are sort of the three headings that I'm sort of grouping this discussion under. So when sort of assessing a person's disability needs, I guess the NDIA are looking at reports and things that have been sent through by your allied health professionals and other service providers, and they're looking at basically how a person's disability impacts their ability to carry out tasks, and how they can function across a number of areas, so including like self-care, so showering, dressing, eating. How independent is a person with those sorts of tasks? Are they able to access the community independently with support? Do they need equipment? What other considerations are there? Work and study, so employment and study. Are there barriers there to employment and study that the NDIA needs to be aware of? Forming friendships, developing social skills, forming relationships and connections, another sort of key area. How does your disability impact your abilities socially and with friends in the community? How does your disability impact your health and well-being? So yeah, we support some people with progressive neurological conditions and more complex disabilities, and that really affects. It can come with a whole host of comorbidities and other health conditions. People can be in and out of hospital or have a lot of interaction with health services as well as the NDIS, and have episodic fluctuations in their health, where their health can be okay for a while, and then there's sort of a pattern of it dipping until there can be some treatment through the hospital or health system as well. So, and then ability to live independently or with others. So do you need support to live independently, or is the person able to live with others, or are there maybe social or behavioural issues and difficulties and barriers that prevent someone from living with other people? So that's sort of the disability needs piece. And then we move through to life circumstances. So the NDI would look at, is the NDI's participant living with others? Are they living by themselves? Do they have safe and secure housing? Number two, is there interaction with other mainstream services, they call it. So that's other government services. So like some of the people we support, obviously accessing and being supported through the NDIS, but they're also interacting with the health system for comorbidities, so other health conditions. They might be interacting with Department of Community, so like housing. They might be living in government public housing. Might be interaction with child protection or justice or aged care. Might be receiving pension, disability support pension through Centrelink. So there's a whole sort of range of different services that are involved in supporting the person, and that can get quite complex. The NGI will look at the family situation and the family dynamics, and if there's sort of complex family dynamics at play. Are there multiple members of a family with a disability? Are there is there prior sort of social and economic factors? Is there the social disadvantage? Is there prior domestic violence? Is there homes where the parents are split up, or there's relationship difficulties within the family. It's something that's considered. If someone is culturally diverse, so if they're culturally and linguistically diverse or Aboriginal, and how that sort of impacts a person's ability to engage with services. If someone lives in a regional or remote location, so like in WA in the Pilbara or the Kimberley, there's thin markets up there, there's not many service providers available, so that's something that really needs to be taken into account as well. And progressive disabilities, so we support people with Huntington's, MS, Parkinson's, motor neuron disease, muscular dystrophy. Those neurological conditions tend to progress over time, and people's support needs will increase, and they're going to need more support over time. So that's a sort of added layer of complexity there in terms of circumstances that might rapidly change. So that's the life circumstances section, and then another specific section that the NDI look at when they're funding NDIS plans is what are the goals of the person. So everyone's goals look different. What my sort of dream life and what my life vision looks like is different to what yours looks like. Everyone's looks different. So someone might have a housing goal, or a goal around finding employment or developing skills or making a friend or becoming more independent or improving their health and well-being and their fitness. So the NDI look at all that and then work backwards from the goals and the circumstances and the disability needs to create a funding package that in the form of an NDIS plan that will assist you to work towards those goals and ultimately achieve them. So there's a few sort of tips and tricks that I have to help you to get the right amount of funding to support you to achieve your goals. I'd recommend be as detailed and thorough as possible when providing reports. NDIS is an evidence-based scheme, and they really take, functional capacity assessments completed by OTs. They're sort of the gold standard. They can be completed by other therapy disciplines as well, like physios and psychologists and social workers. So they're really important. Reports, progress reports, behavioural incident reports, getting them into the NDIA and submitting them, and being really detailed, thorough, and making specific recommendations as well, and outlining any challenges or barriers and risks that you've experienced as well, and that you'll continue to experience. To do that reporting and to get those high quality reports, you might want to make appointments with your GPs and specialists and your other NDIS providers, have meetings with them, and just outline what you're hoping to get out of your next NDIS plan and sort of work with them on the recommendations. Obviously, you can't tell a service provider what to recommend, but you can inform them of what your goals are, and then they can work backwards from there to make the recommendations in consultation with you as a participant. When you're providing reports to the NDIA, make sure they capture how your disability impacts you. It's a little bit sad, and this can be sort of difficult for people, and totally understandably, but you generally want to describe situations where you experience difficulty and you just experience challenges and barriers. And it's great to describe things from sort of strengths-based approach and looking at things positively. But the way that the funding system works is that the NDIA look at deficits and where someone needs support. So I think it's important to not sugarcoat things and not lie either, but don't sugarcoat things and tell the NDIA and express this in reports as well about how your disability impacts you as an NDIS participant, and then that'll ensure that you get the support and the funding that will help you to meet your needs and achieve your goals. So super important to be organised. Submit all those reports ahead of time. Hopefully you've got an LAC or a support coordinator that can help you to do that. And I would recommend, if possible, the LAC or support coordinator can collate all those reports together at the same time and send them in at the same time so nothing's missed. Not always possible, and sometimes you just need to send things as you receive them. But if you're really organised and well ahead of time, you can collate all those forms and reports and send them all in together in the one shell, and that just reduces the chance that the NDIA planner will miss one of those reports because they've all come through together rather than in bits and bobs. And when you actually have the NDIS plan review meeting, be really clear about your goals. So have a big think. If you're the participant of the family, and even if you're a provider supporting the person, be really, really clear. Have a prior conversation together about what you want out of your next plan and what are your goals for the next 12 and 24, 36 months over the next few years. So really paint that picture for the planner and the strategies needed to achieve those. For example, you might have, as a participant, you might have a goal to move out of the family home and live independently in the community in the future, with some supports coming in and out of the home. So strategy you get there might be, hey, I want to really focus on intensive capacity building supports with therapists and with my support workers over the next sort of 2-3 years. I want to get my cooking skills up to scratch. I want to be able to maintain my yard and my home and improve my communication and my confidence. And then in 2 or 3 years, then I'd like to reapply for the funding and engage a provider that's going to be able to support me to then transition out of the family home into my own home. So you got those short-term capacity building goals and then the sort of long-term home and living goals. So that's an example of how you can really paint the picture for the NDIA planner, and that'll really help them because they have to justify what they're funding to their higher ups, to NDIA management as well. So it's important that they can sort of see that vision that you have for yourself. Funding can change over time. So just because you've received an amount of funding in this plan, it doesn't mean if your needs increase. Say if you're living with a neurological condition, or you've got a goal to move out of home, like a really big goal in the future, that your funding can't increase, or if you build your capacity and you actually don't need as much support in the future, you can reduce the supports in the next plan. Funding changes over time. So I think it's just about having the evidence and the reports to back up what you're requesting, being really clear, and then communicating that in the planning meeting with really clear goals and a future life vision, so that the planner can see how the supports will benefit you. Okay, that's all for today, and tune in next week for the next podcast. Thanks. Have a great week.